All right.
I think we're live.
We are live.
Awesome. Awesome. Hello, everyone.
Hello,
Hello,
everyone.
hello.
Hi, Nasiah.
Hello, Dana. I am just so excited about this conversation. And I just want to take a little bit of time before we do anything to welcome and thank everybody for taking time out of their very busy schedules. This is the end of the day, or at least late afternoon for most people. So thank you, everybody, for coming and joining us. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much. Well, I don't, I guess.
Tyra's looking at my lipstick. Yes, thank you, Tyra. For those of you who don't know, this is Lip Bar.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect because that's a good way to start on friendships and women. And sometimes it's talking about lipstick. And sometimes it's more profound than that. But my name is Dana Meller, for those of you that don't know me. And I am one of the co-founders of Pass the Big ABA Exam. And this is my friend, Nasiah. Yeah. And I'll let her talk about herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Nasiah Cirincione Ulezi, and I am a behavior analyst who's worked in the field of disability services for a very long time, over 30 years. And I am just so honored and excited to be here with my friend, Dana Meller.
So I don't know, Nasiah, I guess we should talk a little bit about what are we doing here? Why are we doing this in the middle of the day?
You know what? I do want to start there. Can we let folks know just really kind of what we're standing for and what our intention is in this conversation?
Yeah, I think that would be awesome.
So for me, right, one thing I really want to get clear is, as a Black woman here speaking with a white woman, we are talking from our own perspectives, right? So I would not speak for all Black women. And I know, Donna, you wouldn't speak for all white women. But our intention is, by sharing a conversation publicly, that gives all of us access to something. So I look at us as being very generous with our friendship, very generous with some of the amazing conversations that we have had over the past few years as we've been in community together, just in service of opening folks up, right? One of the things that we've talked about so much is there is something there, like a barrier between, very specifically, white women and Black women, particularly or exclusively for me, because I haven't lived outside of the US, but within this North American USA culture. Would you agree?
I think so. Yep. I would say so. And we grew up on different coasts, and I think we felt that in our own different ways from the conversations. But I want to talk a little bit just about the reason that we ever came together all those years ago is that we discovered that we were both theater kids.
Yeah.
And that sort of led us to talking about, other things that we have in common. And it took us a minute to really talk about the things we don't have in common, even though those things are always in the room with us. And we just started to have these really lovely meetings every once in a while. I mean, I like to call them our Saturday mornings. And we would just share our ideas in this very brave/safe space. And we were proud of those conversations, and we are proud of those conversations and proud of our budding friendship. And we just thought, gosh, maybe there's other people out there that are navigating this, right? Navigating making a new friend and navigating making a new friend that is not exactly like you in this sort of interesting, precarious climate, and what that could mean. And so we thought we would take our conversation public, but there's not really an agenda, right? It's just us philosophizing on how can we be good friends to each other and support each other.
That is absolutely. I do want to back up because you did bring up something that's important. And that is all the things that we actually do have in common. And I'm looking at the chat too. I'm seeing some names pop up that I recognize. Rashida Vieira, welcome. It's good to see you. Good to see your name. You know, I think we do have a lot in common. So we are of the same generation, right? Very close in age. I won't share your age, but I will share mine in just a few short weeks. I will be 52 years old. We do both. We're both queer kids. I didn't share your age. We're both queer kids. You know, that's a passion of ours. We love the arts. We're both behavior analysts, and you know, we definitely had a lot in common, but there are also some very salient differences, right? That could have definitely impacted our connection together, but it really hasn't. And it's actually those differences has made for quite interesting conversation.
Yeah, I wanted to point out that we also, as far as similarities, we also sort of fell into behavior analysis a little bit later in our careers. We both come from I don't mean just from the theater, but from different things. So we both felt like sort of strangers to this universe for, you know, a bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say I think I've worked in disability services for 30 years. So I've been in an allied profession, but I didn't get certified until later. And thanks to your wonderful material, Pass the Big definitely helped me pass my test. Thank you, Dana Meller.
Well, thank you for saying that.
It's true. It's true.
Well, I guess the differences, right?
I think, yeah, there are definitely some more salient differences. I think the most obvious is that I am a Black woman. You are a white woman. And I would say in that, you know, through our conversations, I've definitely found that the socialization process of how one comes to be socialized as a Black woman is very different, I think, than how a white woman is socialized within the context of this country. Right? Some of the behaviors we have might definitely have similar topography, but the function is very different often, and the contingencies that we face as Black women, me as a Black woman and you as a white woman, are quite different. I know we've had a lot of conversations just around emotion, right? Which, if we look, for me, emotion and sharing emotion generously, especially a range of emotion that could include anger or sadness, I have often met, from the time I was a little girl, very punishing contingencies for those behaviors, to the point that as an adult, what I learned is to be very selective in where I shared my emotion, where I shared a range of emotion. And I did find that in my experience, my white colleagues had a lot more freedom to share emotion. In fact, I would say that emotion worked for them more so than it did for me. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think I can see that. I don't, until you and I had spoken about that, I wasn't, I guess I didn't see that because why would I have considered it? I guess that was just a self-centered way of, you know, I knew that as a woman, there were certain powers, right? I never looked at it as a gender, as a race thing. So I can't imagine that I'm not one of those girls that like cry to get out of tickets and things like that, but I would imagine that would have probably been easier for me than for you, right? Had I exercised that that behavior. Maybe it's because I never got any tickets. That might be.
That might be it.
I come from a very emotional culture, so it was reinforced to be emotive and high affect, and then obviously being theatrical on top of that. So I never really considered how that was received, and I guess you had to.
in certain environments. So for me, definitely in the context of school, in the context of as I was a young adult in the workplace, what I quickly learned is as a Black woman, you know, there was very little tolerance, if you will, for me to show up as anything other than happy and content, right? Is if I show, and I want to be very specific because I come from a culture, you know, I come from a background to where I think we're very expressive and we are emotive. That's been my experience, but we learn in certain environments to limit where you can be self-expressed, particularly, like I said, around anger. And for me, it was around anger in the workplace, right? So even now in my work, I'm very, very, very cautious, and I don't ever really try to tax somebody's emotion. The rule that I follow is I get curious about emotion, because over the course of my lifetime, I've had to engage in so much masking to cover up how it is I'm really, really feeling. You know what I want to do? I just want to check in with the chat. I'm
paying attention, but you know what I was thinking? Well, go ahead and check in. We can do that if you see anything. People misconstrue assertive with aggression. Yeah, and I think that's probably true just to our gender. But I think one of the things, since we've been talking, that I learned as a white woman who sometimes tries to navigate Black spaces and just trying to be an ally and participate, is that it takes an extra dose, not an extra dose, a dose, like a relevant dose of compassion to stop and think, you know, what am I internalizing if I'm communicating with someone? What am I expecting? Is that fair to put on someone else my expectations for affect and what emotions should look like? And sometimes maybe I have failed to be compassionate and look at where a person is coming from, or put on them whatever my frame of reference or experience might have been. And one of the things I'm discovering, not just through our friendship, but through, you know, studying and doing the work on true allyship, and is to actually, you know, ask myself, what's going on with this person? What is their why at this moment, and what is the function of their behavior, rather than, you know, the topography, which is a recurring theme in my life right now. And I've made some mistakes in that area. So now I take a step back and I try not to, you know, make assumptions about anything that anybody feels.
So I really appreciate that, Donna. And my hope and invitation is for all of us to do that. It's interesting that we work within a field that has this amazing science, and we have so many tools available to us, but it's interesting that when we start interacting with other human beings, that all of that goes out the window, right? Like, we know this. We know that other human beings come to us with a learning history, right? Except we don't always take that into account with just in our day-to-day interactions with others. And particularly, you know, as I'm interfacing with all different types of human beings, I am finding that nudging myself to remember, you know what, that person has a learning history.
Right.
The way they're showing up today is a part of a long history in a past that included different contingencies. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a powerful, I guess that's a powerful approach that we can use.
You taught me that. I mean, I learned that from you. That's because I've seen you navigate conflict that way. And I think I think sometimes my sensitivities, or my go-to, is to internalize and take things personally. And I love what Tyra is saying right now, because I think that is something I would do, is I would tell myself a story based on my own self ideas about myself, you know, whether it's being a Jewish person, or being a Jewish person or being a woman or those kinds of things. You just sort of start to create things that aren't there rather than really taking the time to get to know this person. And sometimes you run away because of how you feel, and it's based on nothing that's in the room.
Yeah. Somebody is asking a question. It says, can you both please address the ethics code and limitations you see regarding friendship and dual relationships?
Can you be more specific? I mean, the way I'm reading that, Jennifer, is for me, a dual relationship, is probably having a relationship outside of the therapeutic relationship. So obviously that's, you're considering that a limitation for some reason?
That is, and I'm looking too at Rashida. What I've seen in the workplace is when my white coworkers express emotions, they are passionate. Black women or Black people, especially Black women, are considered angry. Like, this is a thing. I certainly, Rashida, would have to agree. Like, the angry Black woman is a thing. Yeah. And I will tell you, I will share this generously. In my lifetime, it is definitely something I have avoided being tagged as, because the contingencies that follow are so punishing, right? I have story after story of being tagged as this angry person and what that means in the context of the workplace. How that impacted how my supervisor would organize their behavior around me, how that impacted opportunities that were made available. So thank you for sharing that, Rashida. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and that's so hard to hear. I mean, I know it's true. So this isn't news to me, but it's hard to be, to hear my friend say that how that felt and dealing with that. Like, obviously I can read an article about that, right? I can even see the comments in the chat, but when you see it sort of realized in people that you well enough personally and you care about, and you can see that from both sides. You can see a white person being afraid or intimidated, right? Or tacted differently with the same behavior. It's very sad, and it's hard to hear that and think, well, I know, because I want to fix everything, and I want to say, I know what we'll do. We'll put out a memo starting tomorrow. Black women are also passionate when they're passionate. And it feels sometimes so hopeless. It feels like, well, this is what it is. We have to accept it. And obviously that isn't true, but it's really hard to hear it and feel like helpless in it. As a one person,
I hear you. Let me tell you, definitely, because I want to give some present contextual examples of how this can play out. Like, I know for myself, there has been resentment built up, right? That my experience as a Black woman is that white women have the freedom to be more self-expressed. Now, I must say, at nearly 52 years old, and nearly what I understand now is self-expression is available to me, right? I had to do the work, the internal work to access that. But over the years, I saw a lot of resentment building, right? That I had to, or at least I thought I had to, put on this face, right? This space for work in the world. And there was some resentment because what I believed, or how it occurred to me, is that white women had it easier, right? There was like, they had more freedom and access to be themselves, and the systems that we were in supported them. So again, I don't know if that's the way it was, and I won't again speak for everyone, but I will say that's the way it occurred to me. And I think that was a barrier for a long time with how I related to my white colleagues, because what was there was, you have it easier, right? Mm-hmm. And it was kind of this unspoken elephant in the room, like, you don't get me, you have it easier, and I have to work twice as hard to get half as much as what you have. That was there.
Yeah. Do you think that, I mean, obviously white women also entered the space with some sort of, feeling of different, right? So I don't know if I could necessarily tact anything that might have kept me from engaging in a friendship with a Black woman, but definitely I have felt those sorts of, we're different, we don't belong together. And, you see that even happen without thinking about it. Like in most communities, people sort of, go with their own, so to speak. I mean, it just sort of organically happens. Do you think that it's just easier because if you don't engage in a friendship with someone different than you, then you don't have to address any of your own biases. You don't have to come face to face with their biases. Like, is it just easier? Is that why people don't go deeper?
Yeah, I think, Donna, it's easier and it's more convenient.
Right.
People, when it comes to relationships, we as human beings often grab the lowest hanging fruit, right? The people who are closest to us are the ones we tend to relate with, right? So for me, as a Black woman, and as a Black woman who is highly educated, I'm forced, right? By virtue of the work I do, I am forced to interact with people who are different than me. Many of the systems I engage in would have me show up as the only person looking like I do, the only person wrapped in Black skin. I think it's different for white women, right? You could grow up in the context of, again, this country, North America. You could go through elementary school, grade school, high school, college, show up in your career, never having really had a significant relationship with a Black woman, right? And I think that because of that, it's gonna take something, right? It's gonna take something, and it's gonna take a certain type of person who hasn't had that exposure to difference and variability to say, you know what, my life could really be better if I connected with people as you did. Donna, you did this, who connected with someone who's different, right? It takes something to do that. It takes something to be in an environment where most people don't look like you.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if people know this, but I've seen you in those environments. I have. And right. So look, if you can share, Donna, what that is like. Because when we talk about that, if we want to get through this stuff, like white women and Black women, let's talk about it. It's going to take us having the capacity to support each other, right? If the expectation is the only way you're going to support me as a Black woman is when I'm in an all-white environment, well, no. I need some bi-directional support, right?
Yep.
You know where I got that term? That's Linda LeBlanc and Tyras Sellers. Bi-directionality, okay? What I want is to see you in environments populated with people looking like me, right? So, and I have seen that, and I think the gift that seeing that gave me is that we have to support each other. Because guess what? When a white girl shows up in an environment, and this environment is not one in which, at least professionally, she's coming in contact with, the white girl might sound a little different, right? And may need some feedback, right? So I think that needs to be talked about, right? That I think there's a tendency when we talk about support, like people are saying, well, yes, when the Black people show up here, we're going to support them. Look, I don't need that support. I've mastered these environments. I really have. What I want to see is a recognition, and I've seen it in you from people that say, you know what, my life would be enriched with variety. And what that means is I don't stand here and say, okay, variety, come to me. I step into environments so I can learn and get receive feedback. I think that's also a conversation that we need to have. Like, I think there is a need for bidirectionality in the burden that all the isms have cost us, right? There's a need for bidirectionality between Black and white women, so we share the burden, right? Because it's created a burden. The racism and all the isms have created a burden and a separation that my hope is that we share it to move past it and share the inconvenience of it.
Yeah, it's true. And what you said was, by the way, I similarly have seen you in predominantly white spaces. And so we've had that view of, we've had that bird's eye view of each other navigating, it's not safe it doesn't feel safe, I should say, to say that, yes, it can feel very uncomfortable. And especially because I'm not yet at a place where I can tact what that means for me, but I also know that it's not a problem for me, that I'm comfortable with the discomfort. It's new, it's different. And really what that discomfort tells me is that I have been in predominantly people who look like me spaces. And not, this is not a conversation to speak to all the ways that, even though I may be in a room full of white people, that I still have my own sense of other and my own, questions about belonging and fitting in. But I think that's universal for everybody. I'm sure if in a group of black women amongst each other feel othered and just as white women do, and men, it doesn't matter. But I know that for me, the discomfort it's almost like an honor. It almost feels like, okay, I got this. And even, even in those moments, I have to get rid of some other learning histories, because as I shared with you, I went to predominantly Black schools because I grew up in Hollywood, California. And so it was, it was pretty diverse. And in those spaces, because I grew up with all different races with the kids, one of the things that I have to remember is that I cannot walk into a new Black space with that same familiarity and act like I'm already part of this group in the same ways that I could at school with my friends that I'd known since I was in third grade or first grade. And so that was the other thing. And I have and probably will continue to make those kinds of mistakes where I feel a sense of belonging because of experiences in the past. Almost even that alone isn't really appropriate, right? It's almost like saying, all Jewish people are the same, right? Yeah. So, and I'm not consciously thinking that, but I do have to remind myself that I have to earn trust because of the experiences of the people that I'm meeting. And that's not race. That's just how it goes down. And I don't know, I do welcome the discomfort. It doesn't scare me. I mean, obviously I'm afraid of saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing, or my intention not being clear, or my action confounding my intention. But I also feel like had I not taken that plunge for the many reasons that I have, I probably would have missed out on some really amazing friends. And not because I was actively avoiding any specific type of person. I just wasn't in those spaces, and it's not integrated like that in the world that I live in, even though I am here in Los Angeles, an incredibly diverse space. So I would have missed out. And part of me, and I've talked to you about this too, like at times I feel like, wow, is this too deliberate? Like, is that problematic that I'm here because I want to make, Black friends? Is that bad? But I feel like you do that in any group you go to. If I go take a class, a dance class or a voice class or an acting class, of course, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, oh, maybe I'll make, or a book club. I'm thinking maybe I'll make some new friends, and that's not different. But there is an extra ounce of deliberateness about making a Black friend. And I've had a hard time navigating that because, I've been on a flyer, whether it's for theater or for ABA, where there are no Black faces. And I've seen the outrage, and I personally feel it when I see it. And so then I have to ask myself, well, how do we change that? You know, like I was in a concert once and it was all white, it was women and it was all white women, and people were like, you know, where's some Black singers? And we were all like, wow, this is just a group of friends that are doing this concert. Nice, inclusive people, but yet no Black singers on the you know, the program. And, you know, we had to stop and go, well, we have to make some Black friends. And that just seemed so wrong. It was just like, what are we just going to go out and shop for Black friends? Like, that's nonsense. But in a way, you do have to do it a little bit more deliberately, because society hasn't positioned us to meet more organically, to meet together more organically. Now, we don't have to stay friends. We can have the natural boundaries of, we don't like each other, period. We don't have to mesh, we don't have to click. But we may not realize that we have so much to share if I don't make that extra step and am uncomfortable, if you will, I'll put it in quotes because it's not so bad, you know.
Yeah. I really love this. So this should be 2 hours, but it's not, so I'll accept that. But
oh no, we're going to continue at WEBA. So if
we are. I hope people. I need to do some shouts. I'm going to miss people, but I think Dr. Bill is here. Dr. Danielle Bill is here. I love you, Dr. Bill. Sin McDonald here. I love you, Sin. These are my ride or die. So it's a part of my culture to speak. I have to speak. and you're bringing up a really good point. One thing that I do want to say, I'm glad you talked about your early experiences being around Black women, right? So this is what I find is that over the course of my career, what people could be with really is they could be with me if I was a peer, right? But when I stepped into the role of leader, right? You report to me, or I have some position of authority, I have experienced a lot of questioning as a Black woman. I have experienced exclusion. And this is what I think, going back to what you said at the top, you know, let's not pretend that this very flawed observational learning history that we've all been subjected to, like that, not seeing like Black women in power, like that has impacted all of us, right? Yeah. So when a Black woman shows up in power, in authority, that's different. That's something that many people aren't used to. So I don't want to step past that, because that is definitely something that I see as a barrier, right? Representation does matter. And again, for many of my white peers, you make it from elementary school through college, through early adulthood, through later adulthood. I can't tell you how many white women I've met who've never had a Black supervisor, right? That has an impact on relationships. And not only that, I think it has an impact on the entire environment. And it's something that I definitely think that we should work to change, because I think there's a whole, there's a skill, there's a repertoire that needs to be developed around supporting Black women in spaces where they have not traditionally held power, right? There's a whole world to that I think is underexplored. Is underexplored. And I mention it because I see the toll that a lot of leadership positions are taking on Black women, because it's really uncharted, right? And there's not a lot of, what I notice around a lot of my white peers is, as they mentor, as they coach around leadership, they coach around gender, right? I'm going to coach you as a woman. But that piece of being a Black woman, especially a Black woman in leadership, requires more. So I'm getting, I think over the next couple years, I'm going to do more writing and speaking around supporting women in leadership, but supporting Black women in leadership. I think it's something we don't talk about enough.
And I think that white women have a role in this. And I think that's maybe a training too, right? Which is, and you and I've talked about this, of course, but, you know, these are your words, but I agree so much that I almost want to own them. But white women take up a lot of space. And I think when you said that to me, I really felt, well, you didn't say that like that. What you had shared was that you had experienced white women taking up a lot of space. And when you said it to me, I felt seen and embarrassed and all the things because, and I never looked at it as a, you know, it's like that book that you suggested that I read, that all of a sudden I'm spacing on the name, about I'll think of it if I stop thinking about it. But, you know, white women don't look at as being marginalized because of their color or anything like that. They really just focus in on their gender. So a lot of behavior from any woman is potentially just, at least for me, I have felt like a lot of times I'm taking in space, I'm filling the room because of anxieties, because of just wanting to, you know, put my stamp on something, to wanting to make sure everybody knows that I've done the work, or I am where I am for reasons, or whatever it is, you know, trying to not be an imposter. And the thing about that's interesting is I've never thought about that as a function of my whiteness. I've only ever thought about it as my gender. And I think what white women have to consider when making space for their Black colleagues is that white women are navigating two spaces of marginalization, right? Like two positions, I should say. That's a new word for me, the positionality, which is, you know, you're marginalized obviously because of your gender, but then also because of your race. And that's not something that you can leave at the door. I can leave my Jewishness at the door. Like and that doesn't necessarily, it's not on my face necessarily, right? But my womanhood enters the room with me. But since it's just the one space that I struggle with, and you have two spaces that you struggle with, right? Then do I have to stop what I'm doing and just think, hey, I've already got the floor. I've got it naturally. It's mine. It came with this skin color. Maybe I just take a back seat for a second or push someone else through. And I don't know if that's the action, but I guess my question is how. Now, I'm not asking you to tell me how, but I am thinking that we as white women have to figure out, you know, more purposeful ways to promote our colleagues that are Black.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I will say, because again, it's bi-directional. One of the things that I have learned to do, one is going back, right? Because I have had, and I'm in community with white women who just haven't known how to support me, right? This has not been, so what I have gotten very skillful at is this, being in communication, letting people know what it is that I need. So what I don't want this conversation to take the turn of, okay, well, it's all on the onus of the white women to I think I want to make sure that we stay centered on this is an experience that we both, in order to break down these barriers and move with and forward, that we all really have to look, right? You know, I talk about reflection, look in on ourselves. So for me, what I've learned, especially in the past, you know, few years, is to look at my communication, right? I think, and again, this is a short conversation, so I really want to disseminate this responsibly. I want to disseminate it responsibly. But what I have found valuable is sharing what some of my needs are, because what I found is so many of my white female colleagues are centered on, I'm supporting a woman, right? That's been their life experience. I'm supporting another woman. And through conversation and me sharing, you're supporting a woman who is also a Black woman. It is different. So the contingencies that I face are different. It's going to require a commitment to supporting, at least me, won't say all Black women, but me in ways that you probably haven't considered. Mm-hmm. So again, I want to kind of make sure that my messaging is one in, because I'm committed, right? Women are powerful. We are powerful. And I think women as a group I've seen this kind of relational aggression comes up when we don't support each other. So what I am standing for is that we as women can get through our stuff, right? To get access to support each other. Just imagine, right? And I can probably sit here and call out right now the white women who I'm able to go there with and have these conversations. Right? That's kind of, at this point in my life, that's a requirement. But when that gets opened up, boy, are we powerful, powerful. And I want everybody to have access to that.
Yeah. You know, something else that you've said before that really rang true for me, because I know I'm very self-conscious about the idea of, you know, asking opinions and advice and asking how should I behave in these situations, or what should I do, or how can I help? And I'm very clear on that question being punished. You know, it's not the right question. And one of the things that you said that I think is really important to share with, you know, anybody else who wants to, you know, practice some of this stuff, right? It's that we don't have to ask how to support an entire community, right? We just have to support one another. We're two people, and we can make such a big impact just with our own relationship. I mean, just this hour is probably meaningful because we're hopefully empowering people to, I don't know, I don't want to say be brave and make a friend that doesn't look like you. It's not that, but I guess it just requires a deeper dive, right? It requires a sensitivity and a compassion and a perspective taking that might be harder work for some than your normal, I'm going to make a friend, we're going to go to the bar and we're going to do shots, right? It's bigger than that.
It is bigger. It is. I want to say this, and this is a gem I'm about to drop. So write this one down, everybody. I'm gonna drop a gem. What you just said is true. So all of us, many of us, right? I know I've been guilty of this. I've looked for the prescription. Like, what do I do? The prescription, you know, well, what do I do to support Black women? We're not starting there. So this is the gem I'm going to drop. Start here. Support that Black woman in your environment by asking her, getting curious and asking how can I support you? What it is you need. Black woman, me, what I'm doing in my environment, I'm getting curious and asking, you know, or asking, how can I support you in supporting me? So I think curiosity about who's right here in your environment that lends itself to relationship building, right? Let's get in community and start relating to each other, not the people out there, right? But the people right within your environment, right? And I'm just going to give a plug for the work that I'm doing real quick.
You should.
If you don't have because this requires component skills and communication, right? It really does. That you haven't learned in your behavior analytic training. If you're interested, I'm doing a webinar in September with Scott Herbst, Upsets His Access. I will put the link in just a minute. I hope you're able to register for that. What that work has opened me up to is I will go there. And the women in my life, Black and white, I mean, I'm so grateful for the conversations we have, but I'm grateful that I have the component skills to have a real conversation and not dance around the issues. So I'll look for it now. Do we want to save some time for questions too?
Yes, we do. I think we have another 6 minutes before we take questions. But I wanted to add one thing about what you said before about women supporting women. One of the reasons that I wanted to, that I suggested that we go public with our conversation is because I I was doing some reading, and the reading was about the feminist movement in the 60s and how women were trying to get some rights, and there was a divide not just between men and women, but a divide between white women and Black women. Yeah. And I made me wonder if Black and white women were unified at that time. And obviously we know the reasons behind that, and that's a different conversation. But it made me just think about how much more power lies in the perspectives and the lived experience of Black and white women in unity, facilitating the changes that we all want to see so desperately. And most people are pretty cynical about whether these types of changes, these systemic changes, will ever happen in our lifetime. And I feel like maybe they'll happen faster because women can do more than, well, dare I say it, men.
You know what? When we say it, I mean, come on, y'all. I'm almost 52 years old. When you get this big age, you know some things, y'all. Listen, women are
I cannot wait to get to this age. I just can't. This big age. Wow. What's it like over there?
Women, you know what? Let's get into it. I mean, when I think about what my body has been able to do, right? I think about the power we as women have. None of us, if we really understood it, none of us would want to be separate. None of us would want to be separate. Because we tap into that energy stream of another woman, collective strength, we would start looking for every woman of every different variety, because there's power. There's power in that. And some of us never get a chance to experience because we're not willing to move forward courageously and break down these barriers.
Yeah, 100%. And this is, I know that you and I are going to continue this conversation, and we're like we said, we're going to be doing this at WEBA, and we're reading books on it, and we're talking about it and looking just for, who else has been talking about this out there. But at the end of the day, for me, it's been, you said earlier, how can I support you, or how can a white woman support a Black woman? But I just have to say before we end this, it's really you who has supported me. And let's raise a toast to Nasiah. It's not that, but I just want to sort of give you that and thank you so very much, because the last few months that we've been doing this have been my favorite Saturdays of all time, because I have been able to say things, and I have experienced being corrected, and again, not in a very sort of diplomatic and helpful way, and I have learned, but I've also really appreciate that you've taken the time to get to know me, and that you consider my positionality so that I don't have to force it on you. And I just really, I'm really just grateful for the friendship and the bravery that you've given me, because I probably could have wallowed in discomfort, and I could have let fear drive me. And it's never been more reinforcing to be brave than these Saturdays with you. And I'm just really grateful.
Absolutely, because we're standing for something. And this is another gem. What has happened in our conversations, during those conversations, you have empowered me to empower you. And I have empowered you to empower me. That's where it is, right? I'm standing for people right now because I know what we can accomplish together, right? If we get past this stuff, right? That is a result of, I'll call it a flawed observational learning history, some contingencies that have not served us. But if we can use our science to dismantle some of these barriers, there's a whole world of opportunity waiting for us. And I've tapped into that.
We got to break some behavior chains.
We do.
Inappropriate chains. We wanted to make sure that everyone's comments have just been amazing. And thank you guys so much for just sharing some of the ways that you can relate to what we've been talking about. We have 10 minutes. If anyone has any questions or comments, please, this is, we've got some time to do that.
I see a question. I
You
see,
do?
and
Did I
yeah,
miss one?
okay. I'm looking at like in the question section.
Oh, yeah.
Little tab. I'll read this one. Is this limiting friendships between BCBAs? Multiple relationships, because I don't know, this is Jennifer, because multiple relationships may result in a conflict of interest that might harm one or more parties. Behavior analysts avoid entering into and creating multiple relationships, including professional, personal, and familial relationships with clients and colleagues. Do you want to take a stab at this one? I definitely have my own thoughts. I don't know how applicable it is here, because we're not speaking to duality in relationships.
Yeah, we don't work together. So I guess there could be risk if we were, we worked for the same, organization or something, and we had any sort of positions that one of us was, in a more power position, if there was a risk of exploitation or something like that. I don't think that's a risk for our friendship. And what's nice about our community, in fact, most of my friends in ABA are not the people that I'm working with. And that's not necessarily on purpose, but it makes it a lot easier for, I don't know, to cross some boundaries, I guess. I'm not sure, Jennifer, if you were the one that asked earlier about what happens when you have a family with whom you relate to more so because you're both of the same culture. I think that goes back to this new word that I'm going to throw around again, positionality. I think it's our job to look at how we relate and also and what we don't have in common with all of our clients. And that's just a way of perspective taking. For me personally, I don't think you have to worry about what the white folks think about you having some things in common with your clients. If that was you who asked that question, I'm sorry that I don't remember.
I think it was the same person.
Yeah. This is the question that came in earlier.
Yeah.
That one's probably better for you.
I would love to answer this, and I'll read it for everyone. How do you navigate the space as a person of color and avoid looking angry? People are not going to like this, but I'm going to say it. I no longer avoid looking angry, right? I lived in that space. I lived in the space of let me look nice. Let me put on my armor and be this person that is content all the time. It did not work for me. At least it didn't work long term. And then when I found out, you know what, Nasiah, you can have an authentic thought, feeling, and it'll be okay. And there are going to be times when you show up in the world and you are going to be angry and people are going to say you're angry, and that's okay. So I no longer a shift like that. Now, that's my privilege talking. And let me tell you about that privilege. I am towards the end of my career, right? I'm very well established, that I am speaking from the lens of I don't come into punishing contingencies when my anger shows up. Now, I was speaking a whole different tone when I had a minor child at home and I was head of household. It's something different. So I recognize my privilege is speaking, but this is what I want to tell you. And I just didn't have anybody coaching me like this when I was a young woman. So if you are young and you are in a situation where you're surviving, right, you need your position. What I'm going to tell you is you pay a price. There's a price paid for living and working under conditions that would have you show up anything other than who you are. And I'm not talking about having to show up a certain way with professional dress. When you have to, and what I was doing was shifting in and out of my personality, right? I was a different person. I was a different person. I was shifting away from my values. What I will tell you is I get it. Like I was there and I had to survive and I had to pick up every day and keep going, and it was hard, but I didn't have anybody to tell me. So I'm going to tell you, you pay a price for that, living that way. And the price for me, what had impacted my health, it impacted the functioning of my family, and I decided that it wasn't worth the price. That I might have to go look for another job, and I did. So I get it, and again, I recognize where my privilege is speaking. But if you are in that situation, I say do the work, the internal work, right, of addressing, looking at what your values are, and really thinking about what's pulling you away from what's important to you, and make some hard decisions.
That's amazing. And I think I like what Tyra said to that. I'm actually, I'm putting in the link. I think, Janet, you asked for it. So I'm putting the link from Amazon for that book that actually Nasiah suggested. But I want to speak to Tyra's response to what you said, which I think that's exactly what I was saying earlier, was that we need some skills as white women to navigate what is passionate, and to get rid of some of the frames that might be in place, which kind of like lines up with somebody asked, how do you navigate? No, that's not the question. Why do you feel like white women feel intimidated by Black women in the workplace? I mean, there's probably so many reasons for that. You know, I wish I could say, not me, I never have. I'm so open and fluid, but it's true. We do. I don't know if there's white women here who could say that they never have. I think that's just part of it. And you know, we have to be able to tact that is true. We have to be able to say, yes, I'm feeling intimidated right now. And then you have to sort of stop, and you have to ask yourself, you know, what is it in you that's capturing that emotion versus some other ones? I had an experience very recently where actually, after doing some thinking, I realized that my problem wasn't actually because the other person was Black. It was because it was bringing up for me, you know, cool girl, not cool girl vibes from school. Like, it was bringing up my own sense of inferiority. And for whatever reason, that was the difference in the room that day. But I was just latching on to that feeling of difference. And it had nothing to do with race, but I probably would have walked away attributing it to that had I not been in the middle of these kinds of conversations. And Nasiah is one of a few women that I can talk to and, you know, go through these, you know, internal struggles. And it's really been helpful for me to sort of talk things out and then come to new conclusions. And had I not had those experiences, I think I would be stuck in framing and looking at things in the same old way, and that would just lead me back to fear and intimidation. Whereas now I've stopped and thought, oh, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with this being a Black person. This has to do with me and the fact that I'm afraid of feedback and conflict, and that is nothing. I would feel the same way. I have felt the same way in similar experiences. So I don't know why, but I would say, as a white woman, just see what else that brings up for you. Why does anybody feel intimidated by anybody?
Yeah. So this is also what I'm going to say, and it's in response to that question. Why do you feel like white women feel intimidated by Black women in the workplace? All I'm going to say to that is I'm going to take us back to what our original kind of intention was. I certainly can't speak for all Black women. Dana can't speak for all white women, but this is my invitation to everyone. Get into this thing we talk about, reflection, right? Understand your own patterns of thinking. Understand your own patterns and the way you organize your behavior around difference, right? Around different people, around different women. And I also want to say this, because I'm seeing this, the word or the phrase people of color, right? I totally get that, but I also want to say that this conversation was specifically for Black and white women, not people of color. It was a conversation really in service of the barriers with Black women and white women. And I want to acknowledge there's intersectionality, but there's something that needs to be dealt with between the relationship of Black women and white women.
And that's all we can address, you and I, because that's our dynamic. And I'm sure that there are different dynamics for different relationships, but we can't really speak to anything other than what we've experienced in our own dynamics. I guess we have another. This is so fun. I don't want it to end.
But I'll see you next week. I hope I'll see some of you next week. I will only be in Nashville for a short time, but this has been wonderful. We'll have to do it again.
Definitely.
Thank you, everybody.